What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be doing a 3-round mock draft with trades. Just like the NFL draft, this mock draft is going to be broken up into 2 different days. Day 1, just like the NFL draft, is round 1, and day 2 is rounds 2 and 3. It allows you to be able, or allows me to be able to actually talk with you guys through my logic and everything. This is a live mock draft, so if you guys do enjoy it, I would love for you guys to stick around, like, comment, subscribe. Below my face is my board. It's going to be different from everybody else's, but if you do want to understand why it is the way it is, I make videos on my positional rankings, but also if you want to see day-to-day stuff, because I'm doing my running back video coming out and I have a lot of clips on this, on my X page, which is easy to get through the link tree, just 2 clicks away from going there. You guys get to see all 22 clips, like coaching tape, that I end up pulling while I'm studying players and put it out there for you guys to justify my opinions. So feel free to go check that out. Of course, check out the sponsor of the show as well, UnderDog Fantasy, where you get up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you sign up. Even though the season's kind of ending, but like you actually, I think they're able to do combine. So they were able to do it last year. I remember I was talking with them. There's a legal loophole where they can't really do the draft, but they can do the combine. It's crazy, but it's still not too late to sign up, and they always have some good incentives going on. But at number 1 for the Las Vegas Raiders, this does have trades. I would debate actually bucking the system and saying fuck taking a quarterback at 1. You guys know my opinion on the quarterback class. I don't have a single one in my top 32, and that's a positionally adjusted. I just don't think any of these quarterbacks are like legit starters, and regardless of system. I think a lot of them are very scheme dependent. I would have these quarterbacks probably QB5, maybe QB6, maybe QB7, if not lower, in last year's class. And I still had a little bit more of a reserved opinion on certain quarterbacks in last year's class, so it is saying something. But regardless of that, Will Levis is trying to get moving on from the team. I don't think that, for the minute price tag of him or Kirk Cousins, I mean, if you think about it, you might be able to do similar to what the Rams and Lions did. Not necessarily 1-to-1, because the Lions had Stafford to bargain with. But I mean, I think if the Titans are, really interested in moving on from Will Levis, you guys could essentially actually, be able to pick him up. But then if you also talk about the Falcons might give you draft capital with their shitty decision on their quarterback if you guys are willing to take care of some of the money. And if you're willing to do that, and I'm not going to do it for this video, but please comment down below and let me know what you think about that potential. You could end up getting yourself a legitimate superstar like Travis Hunter, or you could trade down and still have your quarterback there. But I just don't really think that we can just, based off of all the quarterbacks dropping out, there are 2 quarterbacks that at least are competent enough to be able to take reps in the NFL. And so I do think they will be going at 1 and 2 respectively. So we'll have, it doesn't matter which order, whichever one that you guys prefer. For me, I'm going to go after Shedeur just because of that Tom Brady and AP to Sanders connection. That's pretty much the only thing that's like legitimately holding me back from, having him go to the Giants or something. But regardless, Shedeur Sanders, he is my QB1 of the class by almost an immeasurable margin, because I think it's maybe a quarter of a point. I have a video out on that though, right now. So feel free to go check that out. I have very unique opinions on the quarterback class. It's not very good opinions on the quarterback class, but it is what it is. For New York, I do think they need to go after the quarterback route. Again, you could try to test out a theory of going after another option and maybe just trying to wait a year, get Drew Aller in 2026. But I also don't think if Brian Daboll still has a job that he's going to be able to survive 1 more year of sub-mediocrity. And I think that's the big thing. These quarterbacks buy these organizational members time, and time is the most valuable thing. At number 3, we have the New England Patriots. I'm going to be going Travis Hunter. I don't think I need to elaborate too much on this. However, I will elaborate on the role I think he can play on this team. And I think he will be coming out as a corner and take a couple reps at wide receiver. Do I think that's like the most impactful thing? No. Do I think that you could potentially get better value by trading down multiple times and still getting like a top-tier offensive lineman? Maybe. But I just think it's so improbable that a team like the Patriots, especially, like, let's just say Mayo gets fired, Vrabel gets brought in. It's just when you can have somebody who is so versatile, and I'm talking about He is going to be a really, really good corner. And then I honestly think he could be an Ed Reed level safety. I didn't even think about it, but somebody brought it up, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, I don't value safeties all that highly. I just don't. You'll see guys who I have in my top 20 who end up either not being even taken in the top 100 for, guys who potentially are like slots or like hybrids. But then also guys I have in my top 20 like Nicky Manwari, which I guess he's top 25 now, that will end up going in the second round. But for Travis Hunter, and I genuinely believe this, he could be generational level as a safety. I haven't regraded him as one, but it's just the thought process of someone with such high zone IQ, ball skills, and fluidity. If he fails at corner, you have yourself arguably the best safety in the NFL just waiting for you. Not a bad option. At pick number 4 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, a lot of good options here. Technically, you could try to trade down from here as well. And let's just say I ended up actually spending a couple minutes debating some processes for some trade downs with some certain teams. But to save yourselves the earful that I'm already going to be giving you, I'm deciding to cut that out. I was looking at potentially the Saints moving up for Mason Graham, but it was not in the best interest of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And so if you have to stick and pick, go after the player that's going to benefit you the most. Will Johnson is just so damn good. And I think he is the best player in the class. Even with injuries, he was the best player in the class, and you get him there at number 4. Maybe Travis Hunter could beat him out if Travis Hunter does become that Ed Reed kind of safety, but that's a conversation for another time. And number 5 for the Panthers, I ended up mentioning this before, so I'm going to be sticking to what I did in my 2-round mock draft that came out yesterday. I'm going to go Mason Graham here over Abdul Carter, and here is why. I have Abdul Carter higher than Mason Graham. Granted, what's the difference here? Abdul Carter's a 79.5, where Donde Está. Mason Graham is a 77.25. So 2.25 points higher for Abdul Carter. However, I ended up talking about this. You have to look at the class as a whole, and I don't like playing the Moneyball thing where it's like, oh, opportunity cost. Like, I'm going to get, essentially 2 worse players rather than 1 great one and then 1 not. But the difference is when you make that argument, you have to be evaluating like a legitimate, this is a quarterback that is a legitimate tier below the player that I'm looking at, or like position A that I need more is a full tier below this other guy who's a BPA. And then I could try to, get 2 guys a full tier below rather than, work the tiers that way. And I just don't think that's the case. We're talking about 2 similarly graded players, and we're talking about a class in defensive interior that takes a massive dip. And there's so many good edge rushers in the second round that I don't feel overly pressed to have to go after Mason Graham, heavily pressed to go after edge rusher here, because you're getting first round edge quality talents in the second round. Even into the third round, you can get somebody in a regular standard draft would be an early second. That's very hard to say about this defensive interior class, where you're probably going to get a second round quality player at the end of the first. People talk about how deep it is, but there really is a triple crown for the top, and one of those guys is not looked at by many as part of that triple crown, and that is going to be Omar Norman-Lott. So I do think there is essentially a very, very, very big differential between Mason Graham and the rest of the class, unless you are a big fan of Omar like I am. And then for Abdul Carter, there's still a drop-off, but I do think that the edge rushers are a little bit more versatile, and I think that fits what the Panthers are looking for. At number 6 for the Tennessee Titans, it's T-Mac, Abdul Carter. Like, the question is, will Brian Callahan check his ego and go after Abdul Carter? And I don't think that's going to be the case. I've gone back and forth with it. I've tested out both theories, and just simply put, if he can get his T. Higgins, because Brian Callahan, formerly from Cincinnati, I think he's going to do it. I don't think he's going to roll the dice. It's a really good class for you guys to, you guys could trade back here as well, because we do lack that third round pick. Abdul Carter is sitting here, and we could trade with the Saints. I mean, this is a perfect opportunity, right? The Saints have an extra third and fourth round pick. That's essentially the price tag to move and jump up over all of these players, or all those teams. But the question is, this is something you have to ask if you're a Titans fan. If we make that move, who are we taking at that spot? Do we double trade down and then try to go like fucking crazy? Do we get ourselves a Luther Burden at that point? And I'm just going to be completely honest. You could go after, well, actually, I fuck with that. We're going to go after an edge rusher for the Titans because I was looking at Abdul Carter or T-Mac as it is. And if you're going to pass up on T-Mac, you better get good value, and then you better get a damn good player. And the beautiful thing is when you look at Jahad Campbell, Jalen Walker, and like you also end up looking at James Pierce, I feel perfectly happy with there being great value there. I'm pretty much going to be executing what I wanted to do with the Jaguars, but for the Saints. And so it will be an extra 3rd round pick and then an extra 4th. I am going to assume it would end up being 74 and 123. You can end up trying to toss in other stuff here as well. I mean, I respect it. If you want to toss in a future 3, by all means, do what you like. But for me, I'd feel comfortable if I am sitting here with the Tennessee Titans getting air quotes fleeced for a 2nd or for a 3rd and a 4th round pick. Well, yeah, I did fleece him a little bit. We need to give him a better deal than that. We need to give him a better deal than that, huh? You know what? You know what? The Saints, we're giving you back your 3rd round pick. We're going to do for a 2nd and a 4th. I think that's more adequate. More adequate. I think we can all agree. It's a bit better. So now the Saints also still have their 2 3rd round picks. They also have a 4th round pick. Spending a 2nd and a 4th round pick to move up gives the Titans as well the ability to trade back into the 3rd and still continue to gain draft capital. Now for the Saints, they could end up actually going after T-Mac here, and you're kind of spoiled for choice. And because of that, I mean, T-Mac, he probably would have been taken by a multitude of teams in here. For the price of a 2nd and a 4th round pick, I think Brian Callahan's going to check his ego. We're actually going to go T-Mac for the Saints. We're going to have him move up, and we're going to have him select that. Abdul Carter's like the best pick for him, but I also want to see what's there in the 3rd round. And T-Mac is like a perfect complement to what you have there in Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed. At number 7 for the Cleveland Browns, I'm pretty much all on board with the Ashton Genty train, but that's until I see Abdul Carter on the board. I have yet to pretty much do anything except go Ashton Genty for the Browns. We're going to roll the curveball this week. Abdul Carter goes to Cleveland and pairs up with Myles Garrett, which scares the shit out of me as a Steelers fan, but I think that, it's worth it. It is worth it. For the Jets, I think this is a prime trade back opportunity. You still have Ashton Genty on the board. I don't know if any teams are going to be that desperate to move up for Genty. As much as Genty is a fantastic player, I really do think he's probably going to go to the Bears at this point, like just based on how the board fell. And I heard back from a lot of Bears fans, a lot of you guys are actually vocal about how much you actually like that idea, because I already know I'm going to get a lot of shit on this comment section, but because those people are going to be a little bit too impatient to wait till tomorrow to see the fact that I'm going to absolutely load up an offensive line for the Bears. But regardless, let's look at what the New York Jets could be working with here. I think the best choice for them actually low-key is tight end. Quarterback, no. I mean, you could look at Malachi Starks here, sure. And you could say, hey, you want to trade in division, have the Dolphins move up for Malachi. I just don't know if there's a big enough threat for Malachi Starks at this point. I honestly don't know who would want to trade up. The Bengals don't trade up. Like, there's no offensive linemen that are genuinely at risk. And remember, the thing is, my goal with the New York Jets, hey, trade down. But who's trading up, right? And, I'm not really threatened by the Bears. I'm not threatened by the Bears if I'm the Titans for getting a guy who I'd want. So I think the Jets have to stick and pick. And the NFL is a league of big momentum shifts. Like, they're a big bandwagon league. And I think the best thing that we've seen this year is that Brock Bowers is like unbelievable. He was on pace to be able to break the tight end receiving record in terms of receptions. Not rookie, just tight end in general. So I think that the Jets are going to love it to go after a top end tight end. The question is, do I want to go for Love Lind or do they want to go for Warren? And both are fantastic pieces. Garrett Wilson might not even be on the team because apparently he's supposed to request a trade in the offseason. But I do think that we're going to have to start pushing these tight ends higher. People talk about how this is such a good tight end class. I just personally don't see it as like that good of one. I think there's a solidified top 2 by a good margin. And there are teams that, like, a tight end is a quarterback's best friend. And the top tight ends have always made an exponentially bigger impact than the ones below them. unless you're Jonnu Smith, which thank God I have him in my fantasy league. I mean, like, talk about clutch, by the way, just randomly picking his ass up. But regardless, for the Bears, this could be a spot where you do trade down a little bit and still get someone like Genty. I still think he's going to go in the top 10. It's just nearly impossible for me to see him slip out of the top 10. I don't know if the Titans would pass on Ashton Genty at this point. You know, like, Tony Pollard's not there forever. Tyjae Spears doesn't even have part of his knee. Like, it is possible that the Titans could say, well, I mean, we traded down. We got some extra picks. Let's just make the most of it. So, again, I want to usher I want to be able to let y'all Bears fans know, wait for tomorrow before you start acting Krabby Patty. And I know a lot of y'all won't, because you guys actually really like this pick. But the best counter I've seen to not going Ashton Genty, if, like, assuming, again, I want you guys to know, I'm going to be loading up an offensive line, a minimum of 2 of them tomorrow. So, again, like, let's on the same page. We're going to get ourselves a tackle. I mean, technically, Jones can come back and not actually be an issue. But I still think it's at least good for us to test the waters and see if we can get somebody. But on top of that, you know, just have some patience, because we're going to address the offensive line tomorrow. And the best way, like, again, best counter is, hey, these running backs, Bijan as well as Jameer, were dropped into teams with completed offensive lines. We're going to complete the offensive line, just maybe not at the same pace that you guys want it. And that's okay, because the best way to relieve stress on a quarterback is by having a damn good run game. And the best way to relieve an offensive line that has issues pass blocking is to allow them to just plow forward like a Spartan unit and be able to absolutely kick some ass on the ground. And so we're going to be going Ashton Genty for the Bears at pick number 9. I mean, simply put, if you look at the fact that at 6 and 8, respectively, in that draft, Jahmyr Gibbs was supposed to go, as well as Bijan Robinson did go, you cannot say that Ashton Genty has no place in this spot. And I do think these teams will genuinely be curious about being able to test the waters on that. But for the Tennessee Titans at pick 10, is there a team that might want Malachi Starks more than the Dolphins? I could honestly see a couple teams in here. And I just wish the Bengals traded up. It's just not within their DNA to do so. And it really comes down to the Colts, that I could see them seeing, hey, this is a small range trade. I mean, it's in division. That's the reason why I wouldn't want to do it. But for the right price, everybody has a good price. But I also want to see, does anybody want a tight end? Like, I'm just going to say, like, we could try to disarm one of our opponents here by being able to go and grab and have a team wanting to move up for one of the top tight ends. And my only concern with moving back to pick 19, first off, the Chargers don't need to spend that much to move up. Like, I love Colson Loveland. The Chargers aren't in that type of position where they're one tight end away from being like Jesus' second coming. That's just not going to happen. I think the Niners could be a dark horse team for it, because they always get $1 billion compensatory picks. But I mean, outside of that, not really a team that I'm seeing is like overly anxious to move up. So I don't think we're going to have a buyer. And if we're going to have to go after the best player available, I'm actually going to go right down the street in Tennessee. We're going to go right down to Knoxville, and we're going to get ourselves the second best player in the class, and that's James Pierce here. Gets no respect because of his size, and you know what? It is what it is. And yeah, you pass on Abdul Carter to go after James Pierce. I think James Pierce is better. I think James Pierce is different. That's the thing. Don't try to act like it's like a legitimate, like he is better than Abdul. Completely different style of player. Abdul is a linebacker that has transitioned to edge, and he's somebody who is still developing and doing an excellent job at it. James Pierce is someone who's been a consistent edge rusher for Tennessee that finally put all the pieces together. But James Pierce, I think, is a better run defender than Abdul. I think he's a similar level pass rusher, and just maybe has like that lack of ability when you go up against a Jordan Mailata to be able to handle that type of size, the maybe that Abdul Carter can. But James Pierce, don't get it twisted. I think this dude's a stud. Adding an extra second round pick and a fourth round pick to get James Pierce, I'd prefer James Pierce over a second and a fourth over Abdul Carter. Pick number 11 for the Miami Dolphins. This is Malachi Starks, losing Javon Holland. Let's not twist it. I know that there's good offensive linemen there. Your GM does not go after him. At number 12 for the Indianapolis Colts, let's not get it twisted either here. I know that you guys want to trade back and get Colson Loveland, but I do think this class really is lacking. It really is lacking in the top end talents. And I don't think you guys are in the mood to continue testing those second and third round and fourth round and fifth round tight ends to see if one of them sticks. Just get one that does. And if you want to help out AR, be able to give him like at least more of a reliable option to boost up his completion percentage, giving him someone who is a mismatch, pretty much a wide receiver at tight end and can still kind of block very well, is kind of the best gift that you can give him. At number 13 for the Cincinnati Bengals, it's an interesting spot to be in because you still have Nick Scotton here. And I know necessarily we don't need to go after that body type, but it does fit. Like, it's like hand in glove type of fit. So I'm going to go after Nick Scotton. I think it's a fairly reasonable decision to make, and we're just going to leave it there. For the Cowboys, we could try to trade back here, but I do think that there are some risks for teams trading up for a talent like Amari and Hampton. Amari and Hampton, I could see him being a top 12 selection. Like, whenever the Cowboys pick is, I think they need to go running back because that's the biggest piece of the puzzle for them. Just is a massive lacking position. When you have someone, and I was a big Amari and Hampton hater. You'll see this week. I was a big Omari Hampton hater. I am like his biggest fan now. I really have seen this guy ascend to the point where I think he could be a top 3 running back coming to the NFL. Crazy curveball, but Ashton Jeanty and Amari Hampton might be the second and third best running backs in the NFL when they come in. Like, they'll be top 5 in my opinion when they take the field, especially if they end up on the Bears and Cowboys respectively, if the Bears do what I'm planning on doing for them. At 15 for the San Francisco 49ers, you guys are just in a world of like absolute bliss. Like, this is just perfect for you guys. And Josh Simmons is the best offensive tackle in the class. He also could play guard for you as well. He had a season-ending injury, but he's the guy with the fewest amount of questions, in my opinion. Every time someone says, like, oh, someone has no questions, outside of Joe Alt, it always tends to backfire in their face, including my own. And Josh Simmons has just shown the progression that I absolutely love, has great form, put it all together this year. And you could tell. So something I loved about Sauce Gardner, why he ended up being my number 1 player, and ended up being, coming into the year, I think my number 8 player when he did come out. Like preseason wise, I think he was like top 10. But the reason why was the year before during their bowl game, I remember the announcers talking about how much easier it would be to pass on Cincinnati's defense when Sauce Gardner wasn't there. And you can measure the impact of a player and how good they are by how much their team suffers when they're out. Now, you have to evaluate what the quality of the backups are, sure. But there's a massive differential when Josh Simmons left. And, I mean, you can also talk about the value of Donovan Jackson at the same time, because Donovan had to fill those shoes. I mean, there was someone who else filled it in the short term. He did not do well. But then you ended up having Donovan Jackson go there. But you also measured Donovan Jackson's value by how poorly the interior of the offensive line started playing. And then Seth as well. So it's just like you could tell how valuable Josh Simmons was. You look at the run game, you look at those statistics, the running backs both right off a cliff. And Josh Simmons is that reason. He really is that big of a difference maker on a team. So I think he's fantastic. I do think he gets no love, no respect, but I'm going to be the one to give it to him. At number 16 for the Atlanta Falcons, I might throw a curveball here. Caleb McGarry is not the best pass blocker in the world. Kelvin Banks is almost very intriguing to me. I'm not going to pull the trigger on it just yet because I want to hear y'all's thoughts. That might be next week's pick. Like, I really want to test that out. Like, deep down, I need to look at Caleb McGarry's contract to be able to really, just really commit to that. But for the Falcons, I think being able to go after Jalen Walker is, the best thing you can do. I love Jihad Campbell. He's, literally 0.75 points behind Jalen Walker at this point. But Jalen's still developing as an edge rusher. Same thing with Jihad Campbell. Apparently, Jihad Campbell was, the 3rd graded edge in his high school class. Just saying. But Jalen Walker is an absolute savage. I know that we could have traded back and maybe gotten Jihad Campbell, but I also see a team that's in my division at 20 that'd be very excited to get Jalen Walker, and I just cannot stand for that. At number 17 for the Arizona Cardinals, this is why I love you guys so much, by the way. I was rushing to the podium to get Jihad Campbell here, and I was like, Well, it ended up me not going with that route, and I think I ended up going Tyleik Williams, which, by the way, probably going to be the pick for this spot anyways. This team needs defensive interior help. Tyleik Williams is literally the perfect example of, like, stability, and he's an amazing run defender, good block shedder, still developing as a pass rusher, but he's going to be the pick. But I ended up going after an edge rusher in the second round, and I think it was Mike Green. It was one of the Mike Green, Azir Waku, and Kyle Kennard trio. And someone brought up a brilliant point because I didn't factor in Baron Browning potentially returning. Like, if he does, you guys ended up showing that you have a need for it. If you guys don't bring him back, I think it confirms it. But if you guys bring him back, you're right. There are so many players who play that boundary edge role as that outside linebacker. If you're going to be looking for, edge talent, you're going to look for someone who might be a little bit more sizable to be able to play a new role and be able to cover up for maybe where the size doesn't really fit with those guys. You got Zaven Collins as well. So, again, good job on you guys for being able to call me out and stuff like that. I do appreciate it more than I could ever explain. So, power to you guys for doing that. But at pick number 18 for the Seattle Seahawks, let's not fuck around and find out the hard way. We're going to be going after Kelvin Banks here to play our guard spot. But then we're also going to be kicking him to tackle when Abe Lucas gets hurt. I love it. I just love the ability to just be enforceable, like just be an absolute savage of an offensive line, which you guys are not right now. So go after Kelvin Banks. Don't overthink it. At 19 for the Chargers, I know I've got some approval for this. We're going to go Will Campbell out of LSU to play interior offensive line. The interior offensive line needs help. Get the best value for it. At 20 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, this is Jihad Campbell. This guy's an absolute beast. He's not a linebacker. I think that this actually grades him fairly, I think it was 42, was where Trevor has him on his big board. That grades him fairly as a linebacker. But I see this guy as an edge rusher in the NFL. I think this guy could be somebody truly special, probably the best athlete I've ever seen at edge rusher. Granted, he's 244 pounds, so it's not like he's a big guy. And at certain points, his anchor can look like he's 244 pounds. But when it comes to the timing the snap, I have yet to see an edge rusher have the timing that Jihad Campbell does. And you guys brought it up. This dude was transitioned to linebacker because of the quantity of edge rushers that Saban had on his roster when he brought in Campbell. And he was like, hey, we could put you to linebacker, but this guy, he was destined to be an edge. Let him be an edge and replace Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. At 21 for the Los Angeles Rams, it's an easy pick here. It's Arianti Ursery. I'm going to keep it as is. At 22 for the Washington Commanders, I went corner yesterday to keep it fresh. Not going to keep it fresh today. I really do think Luther Burden's going to be the likely option. Just give Jaden Daniels as many solutions as possible to the problems he has. At 23 for the Denver Broncos, I think we could try to trade back here. Mecca Ibuka makes a lot of sense, but Cam Williams is the guy who I think teams should be trying to move up and target. Is there any team that's looking for a high-valued tackle? I can see the Chiefs getting excited for this, but you're not going to trade in division. Is there any team? I mean, technically the Steelers could be on the market. I mean, our offensive line is not necessarily super duper consistent and sold for the future. I mean, we could move up with the Bears. Man, can you imagine that? All the Bears fans. We're not getting a right tackle though. No shit. I mean, it would be funny to see how y'all would react. I saw Wyatt Milo in person yesterday. This dude's a mammoth. The dude's crazy, but I don't think there's anybody to tango with. I just don't know. With Cam Williams, I guess you could try to trade here with the Ravens, but is anybody really trading up for Cam? I don't think so. So, there's not really anybody to tango with. I mean, you do have Kenneth Grant here, and I guess that should intrigue some teams. Again, I have him where do I have him? And again, there's a lot of guys who are still, obviously you could tell this is not meant for full production at the moment, but you guys really like it. And there's a lot of dudes in the yellow range that continue to get moved up and down. And as they get reevaluated, you got TJ Sanders at 61. Kenneth Grant's at 81 on my board. I don't really know if he's necessarily, his quick wins are absolutely insane. The question is, you could talk about Green Bay trying to move up here and select Kenneth Grant. And actually, you know what? Kenneth Grant to Green Bay, Green Bay getting exciting on draft night when they're in Green Bay, that's kind of sick, is it not? I feel like that's awesome. And Green Bay needs an edge. They need a corner. I think they really don't have any extra picks. Why do they not have any comp picks? You know what? Fuck it. We're not doing it. We're going to go Emeka Egbuka to this team. Physical, bigger receiver, reliable. Like, just, it's one of those guys that you won't overthink too much and just get yourself a quality player. But, I mean, it breaks my heart. But, like, Emeka Egbuka is just super consistent. Gives Bo Nix somebody who's reliable, who's used to that type of weather, and also is a good blocker. So, it bums me out, but it's like, man, let's not waste a ton of our time here. For the Baltimore Ravens, I think that Cam Williams might be almost too good to pass on. I know there's a lot of defensive weapons here, but like offensive tackle wise, I've kind of been a big fan of them going after Josh Connerly. Let's go after Cam Williams and test him out at left tackle. I mean, we saw that last year with J.C. Latham. We might be able to see it this year with Cam Williams. At 25 for the Houston Texans, might end up going after Wyatt Milam, but again, it's just so, like, it's impossible not to go Kenneth Grant for them because they do need defensive interior and they, like, you have a defensive coach. So we'll let D'Amico Ryans get his guy in Kenneth Grant. At 26 for the Steelers, probably actually would have been my pick for the Steelers. That would have been a fun one. But for the Steelers, not really a ton of options that I'm, like, overly enthused about because I love a lot of the corners and I feel like I could trade back and still get like really good value here. The problem is I don't see many players worth moving up for. And if you guys are new to the show, I do not have Ben Morrison as a legitimate player in these until he declares. I imagine he is not declared. But I mean, wide receiver wise, there's just nobody that I think is necessarily worth it. And it's like, there's a lot of corners that are worth it. That's why I take corners so often to this team. But still, you know, I mean, it's just such a tough spot to be in for the Steelers. At least we do have that option. But I do also think running back's not off the table. I don't think that's going to be a first round thing. I think it might be like a second or a third, but we'll go back to the corner well. And a lot of good choices here. You can't really go wrong. Who's the one who has the most experience in colder weather? That is Darian Porter, but he doesn't have a ton of experience. So it's like you kind of roll the dice there if you want to go that route. I love Trey Amos, but I'm actually we'll go a little bit crazier here. We'll go Darian Porter because he's used to that like Midwest kind of environment, the weather, and you get to see that this guy is still very consistent through it all. Regardless, probably would have been my next pick for the Green Bay Packers. But now you got Michael Williams here. Kind of hard to see him slipping out of the first. While some people have him as like their number one player still. I don't get that, but hey, who am I to say anything? I have a lot of guys who are a little bit crazy up high on my boards. Granted, I tried to be able to back it up at least with some evidence, but I also think the Packers don't need to go after an edge in the first. They don't. Let's go after a corner. Let's do it. Screw it. We're going to go Azariah Thomas. I love Azariah Thomas. He fits Jeff Hafley's system of a press man system, but he also is extremely athletic, 6'2", 198, kind of a guy that you can't go wrong with. For the pick number 28 for the Minnesota Vikings, I want to trade out of here. You got Michael Williams here, and I do think a team needs to move up for him. You got Buffalo here, so I do think that maybe a team that's competing with Buffalo, a la the Detroit Lions would be a good spot. You could also technically talk about the Chiefs trying to develop him as well. And so I think the Lions might be you don't want to give it to your own division, though, do you? No. You could talk about the Raiders trying to move up and then developing Michael Williams. Granted, they haven't even developed Tyree Wilson. Just saying, not to rub anything in, but you know, it's kind of true. Ugh. It does not look good though, does it? I mean, technically, we don't need multiple edge rushers for the Titans, but are there any teams that need top tier corners? You could technically give it to the Chiefs. The Chiefs could move up to get their guy, but they also could stick and pick to select their guy. Not a very good situation for the Minnesota Vikings to be in. Not at all. Like, are the Eagles going to try to jump the Bills to be able to select Michael Williams? Like, I don't really think that's like that big of an issue to where they would want to do that. I mean, not going to lie, not a bad option for the Eagles to just be able to move up and select another Georgia defender, but that's not the reason I'm going to be doing it. I think that's the smart pick, or smart move for Philly, because you guys are still kind of like being cohesive. You still allow guys like Nolan Smith to have the limelight, and it does allow you to be able to give the Vikings at least some sort of draft capital. And technically you could give him 132 for this type of move. 17 to 15 was pick 120. So actually 157 is a little bit more feasible with that. It just gives the Vikings a little bit more draft capital, and it gives Philadelphia the luxury of choice. We're going to go Michael Williams there. At number 29 for the Buffalo Bills, if you can't get Michael Williams, you might want to look at the defensive interior. You got Walter Nolan here. You got Omar Norman-Lott here as well. Love TJ Sanders. Technically have him above Walter Nolan, but again, you know, it is what it is. A lot of edge rushers there in the second round that I might feel very comfortable for Buffalo specifically on, to where I actually do think that they'd be ending up opting for defensive interior. And I think Walter Nolan's just going to get a lot of love, and a lot of people say, including Jordan Reed, he's similar, but a little bit larger than Ed Oliver coming out. Kind of makes sense for him to pair up with Ed Oliver. At 30 for the Minnesota Vikings, we're going to go Wyatt Milam here. Don't mess around and, you know, get yourself a high-quality interior offensive lineman to help out. At number 31 for the Detroit Lions, you know, technically it would have been a potential pick for the Lions as well, but they're sitting here at 31. Looking at an edge rusher primarily, I mean, you could end up waiting. Not going to blame them, honestly, if they wait. I think that we might be in a good position to wait. I love LT Overton. I think he should return to school. But, you know, I haven't actually gone after interior offensive line in a hot minute for the Lions in the first. And maybe I did it. I might have done it yesterday. But besides that, we're going to go Jonas Savania here because I love what he can do on the interior of the offensive line, and he has the ability to fill in for tackles if need be. And people even thought he'd be a center. So in case Ragnow, you know, future a little bit in the air, Jonah could be your guy. Just saying. And at number 32 for the Chiefs, I'm going to go after corner here because there are so many good ones. And we're going to go after Trey Amos. Jahdae Barron is a beast too, but Trey Amos is big, physical, at the catch point. I think that you need a receiver like that to truly be able to compete as a top-tier defense and not just solely rely on Spags to do all the dirty work for you. So we're going to go after Trey Amos there at 32. But that's going to be the video. Stay tuned tomorrow for rounds 2 and 3. I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.